My new book, Pillars for Life, A Guide to Spiritual Ethics and Practice, is now out and available for you to read and purchase. You can check out our website, willowhealing.org, to find a link, or you can find it on Amazon. We look forward to getting your feedback, and if you love it, please leave a review and share with your friends. Now it's time for the show. Welcome to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We are so excited to have you joining us on this journey where we explore different ways to empower your soul, whether it's healing in your kitchen or all the way up in the corporate world. Come with us as we look into different ways to heal your mind, body, and soul. Hey everyone, it's Catherine from Willow Healing, and today I am here with Aneta Warclaw. So she has experienced her own journey of breaking free from a toxic relationship. She has turned her pain into purpose, and now she helps others build their self-worth, rewire their mindset, and step into the life they fully deserve. Her approach blends emotional healing, neuroscience, and holistic wellness to guide people through from surviving to thriving. So a big welcome to the show, Aneta.
Thank you so much for having me, Catherine. It's an honor to be here.
So I guess, where do you want to start on your journey? Because I feel you'll know where you need to start.
Yeah, I'm pretty an open book, but I guess we can start from the beginning. Let's start from the beginning and we can work our way to where we are now. So, I'm originally from Chicago and I was born and raised there and I loved living there. I actually was a hairstylist in the city and I loved working in the city. I loved how walkable it was, but there was a problem. Working in the salon, I was always focusing on the outside appearance, the hair, the nails, the eyelashes, all of it. But I was never focusing on the inside. I was never controlling or taking serious the thoughts that I have. I was never taking serious the conversations I was having with myself or the conversations I was having with clients. I wasn't serious about the food that I was even consuming. And because of that, I ended up attracting a really unhealthy relationship. That was actually a blessing in disguise at the time. And that relationship completely shattered me into a million pieces. And it wasn't until I left that relationship that I started to work on my healing journey and really dive deep into doing the work on the healing journey. And flash forward a year and a half after leaving the relationship, I decided that I just needed a fresh slate and I needed a fresh start. So I ended up moving abroad and I moved to Mexico. And that's where I started writing and that's where I started podcasting and really diving deep into my healing journey. Because all I really want to do is share my education with other people on things that I wish I knew once upon a time. And from there, I've been really creating a community around healing and a community that people can come to so they have a safe space when they're in challenging situations like that as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's such a beautiful thing, Aneta. And we all have our own unique stories, right? And it's through our experiences and our journeys that's where our wisdom that we can share with others comes from, because it's only through real life experiences that we can go, hey, this is what's happened. This is what I learned. And, I talk to people about our motivations for learning things starts as selfish and then it becomes a bigger thing, right? Because it's like, I need to work on me. Oh, but I can share this with other people and empower them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually one of the first reasons why I wanted to go to beauty school and why I wanted to be a hairstylist because I hated my hair and I didn't know how to do my makeup. I grew up as a dancer. So in the ballet studio, they tell you how to do your hair and they tell you how to do your makeup. And 9 times out of 10, it's stage makeup, and you don't want to be walking around in public like that. So I struggled a lot, especially in high school. I didn't know what I was doing. So then I enrolled in cosmetology school just so I can learn how to curl my hair and what shampoo I should buy to use. And I wanted to help other people as well because if I struggle with that, then other people do as well.
Yeah, and I love that, because even in your first life, I call it your first life because we
Yeah.
go through many, right? It was again exactly that initial, like, I want to learn this, and then I can do it with other people too. And I feel sometimes that's where our most beautiful offerings come from, and how we work with others is because that innate curiosity you had to learn something for yourself, and then realizing that, oh, maybe there's a bigger reason why I was learning that rather than just for me.
Absolutely. And I always encourage people, if you're facing a challenge, take a second and slow down and step back and see, what is this challenge trying to teach me? For example, I hated my hair, so what was that trying to teach me? Because I'm a firm believer that we're all here with a purpose to serve one another in some way, shape, or form. So we all have gifts, we all have talents, and we all have abilities in very unique ways. So, how can we use our gifts and our talents to help other people? Your challenges are not supposed to hurt you, they're not supposed to break you completely. They may break you to a certain point, but you won't be given anything that you can't handle. So they'll break you in order to let go of the old so you can rebuild a better version of yourself. And I really like to preach and teach on that because like I said, you're not going to be given anything you can't handle. So when you face a challenge, say, how can I learn from this and how can I use it to help other people?
Yeah, I love that. So, like, with my coach who I've worked with, he calls it compassionate self-inquiry. Like, what this is teaching me? What does it mean? And how do I move forward now? Because often when we get stuck in that victim mindset and get stuck in this is happening to me and it's so horrible, then you're not actually looking for a solution to get out of it. And instead of trying to, like you said, ask those questions about the why and how can I learn from this and how can I use it to teach other people, then you get stuck in that drama triangle and you can't move out of it because your brain's not looking for a different answer. It's just looking to keep fueling that story that you've gotten stuck in.
Absolutely. And it's like nothing is meant to work against you, but I always encourage people. We have two choices every single day from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed. You can see the good in everything or you can see the bad in everything. We all believe in one of two things that we don't see, faith or fear, and that's your choice. You can choose to sow good seeds and you can choose to sow bad seeds. Every day, every moment is just a choice. And are you going to sow good seeds or are you going to sow bad seeds? Because just because you may not see results immediately and you may not see progress immediately doesn't mean it's not happening and doesn't mean it's not going to happen for you. Think about this. If you plant a seed of a type of flower in the ground and you start watering it and putting sunlight on it, and you thought by within a couple weeks it would be sprouted already, but it hasn't. You're not going to dig up the seed and say, hey, are you ready yet? Are you coming? No, you're just going to continue watering it, continue giving it the sunlight that it needs, and eventually it will come up. And that's the same thing with us as humans, is that every choice we make, it's either going to help us improve in the future or it's going to derail us. For example, drinking an extra glass of water right now may not make a huge difference in the moment, but if you continue to drink an extra glass of water every day, you will start to feel yourself feel better
Mm.
and to feel more conscious and to feel more focused just by changing that little habit. So I always say, like, if you want to create better habits, if you want to change old patterns, break it down into small, tiny, actionable habits. What can you do right now? We don't have the past anymore, and the future is determined based on what you're doing right now. If you say, oh, I'll eat healthy tomorrow, well, tomorrow is determined by right now. So, what can you do right now to determine a better tomorrow?
Yeah, exactly. And if you keep living of, oh, I'll put it off till tomorrow, I'll put it off tomorrow, it's never going to happen, because you're constantly putting it off. And instead of just like honoring that feeling you have to do that, just do it. And I am that person where I will just do things. And I get really frustrated if I end up with a to-do list because I rather just do it as soon as I think of it. But sometimes, you might be driving a car and you can't send an email at that very moment, right? So, you just have to honor that. And I love the analogy you used, Aneta, about you don't dig up the seed. You don't. You leave it in there and you keep waiting for it to keep blooming. And, it is exactly how you said you have a choice every day, whether you keep choosing to do better, and challenge yourself and building those habits and creating a life that you want to live, not what everyone else tells you what you want it to look like, right? Or you can choose to just put it off till tomorrow, put it off till tomorrow. And for me personally, I remember I made these brownies, right? Just on a side note, I made these brownies to
Yeah.
bring to this event. And all these people were like, oh, I'm not going to have that, and all these reasons. And I get that. And they said, oh, you're having another one. And I said, you know what? I made these. I really like them. And I said, at the same time, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and regret not having that second brownie. And I'm really want to have that tiny bit of brownie and eat it and enjoy it because you don't know what will happen tomorrow either. So putting your dreams off till the next day might mean you never get to do them.
Yeah, really enjoy the present moment because if you can put your head on the pillow at night and say, I'm proud of what I did today and I did well done, then that's worth it. But if you lay your head on the pillow and you say, oh, I could have done more, and you start beating yourself up, I didn't do this, I didn't do that, I'll do it tomorrow, then that's not really the best place to be. I'll give you a real life example. When I was going back to that relationship that I was in, the really unhealthy one, we met when I was 20 years old. And when I was 21, we ended up getting married. And then when I was 23, I was like, this is way too chaotic. I need to get out. So we ended up filing for divorce and going our separate ways. And when I was in that relationship with him, I was relying on getting high and drinking a lot. And then when I left the relationship, I was totally fine. But then I started hanging out with friends who were doing those things again. And I would buy like a pen and I would get high throughout the day. And I would always say, oh, I'll stop smoking tomorrow. Oh, I'll stop smoking tomorrow. Or I'll stop smoking when the pen runs out. But that wasn't doing anything because it was just continuing the cycle. And the cycle was continuing to derail me. And it wasn't until I had to finally get up and throw it in the garbage. And that's when I stopped smoking. And that's when I stopped getting high, when I made the decision in that moment. Because if you delay it until the next day, you are going to continue that cycle until you put your foot down and say, today is the day I am putting down these bad habits. Today is the day I choose a better life for myself. Because if you don't choose today, you're never gonna choose.
Yeah, and that's such a powerful message. If you don't choose today, you're never going to choose because you aren't. You're just going to constantly put it off and put it off and put it off. And like you said, being really conscious. And I think you mentioned that at the start, and being serious about what you consume. And it's not just like your example, it's not just what you put in your body, it's who you're around as well, because and what you watch and what you listen to, because if you're doing things to enable you to stay in that habit that you want to break, then especially people around that who don't understand what it's like to be, on a different path, essentially, they're going to keep enabling you to stay in that habit. And then usually when you make that conscious choice, for me, I've known this too, but when you make that conscious choice, this is enough, I'm not participating in this anymore, I'm not doing this anymore from right now, like you said, then everything changes, right? Those people don't know who you are anymore, and they'll just naturally fall away because all of a sudden the toxic bonding moment is disappeared.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's exactly like what you just said. It's not just smoking, it's not just drinking. There's so many other aspects like social circles, the food you're eating, um, what you're listening to. That is such a big one. I cannot comprehend that. I cannot. say that enough. What you listen to truly does matter. I remember when I would listen to music that had negative messages and negative words and a lot of swearing. I would have really bad actions. I would have bad actions followed by that music. 9 times out of 10, my ex partner and I, we would just end up arguing because I would get into some kind of mood or some kind of mindset because of that music. But then when I would listen to more positive and uplifting music, or even just meditation music with no words, my actions were completely unrecognizable, followed by that music. I remember when I was growing up as a ballet dancer, I would go work out at the gym as well after hours, and most people in the gym would be listening to like hard EDM, screamo music, and then there's me going to lift weights and listening to ballet music because that kept me sane and it helps me have clarity. It sounds crazy. My personal trainers were like, Aneta, what are you doing? Turn that off. I was like, no, it's great. We're just going to fly in. We're going to lift weights.
Exactly. And I love that. I just have this image of you then, like doing a ballet pose whilst lifting these weights with this ballet music on and all these guys like with big weights around you. And you're like, I'm doing my own. I'm just being in my own space.
Exactly. Like the personal trainer would like come up to me and like tap my phone and see what I'm listening to and be like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It keeps me calm, okay? Keeps me sane."
And it's funny too, because often, depending on where we are in our mindset and our life, we'll like different songs, right? And then when they come back on your playlist at a later point, you're like, oh, why was I listening to that? And you just take
Yeah.
it off. And I guess that's the most beautiful thing now. Whereas, back in the day when I was younger, we'd have CDs and you can't just get rid of the song if you've made like a mix CD. You can skip it, but then you end up skipping the whole thing. Whereas at least now, with playlists and things, you just add a new one to replace it. But and I like to play the game where if I'm feeling not great, I use music to uplift me all the time. But if I'm not feeling great, I'll just put like my Spotify playlist on shuffle through my like music. I'll be like, universe, send me a song to cheer me up. So then yesterday it was You're the Best from Karate Kid, the original one. It's like, you're the best. And
Oh.
I'm like, yes, I am.
That's incredible. I always heard this one country song and it said, don't listen to the radio when you're feeling sad because the radio always knows what to play. But it's like your phone it's crazy, I know, but your phone is always listening to you and it knows what you need to hear in that moment, which is also kind of uplifting as well. Makes it less weird that your phone's listening that much, but at least it's playing the right stuff.
Exactly. Well, then the next song after that was Emotions, and that one by Ella Henderson's like Emotions Are Getting in the Way. And I was like, yes, it's so true.
You're like, yeah, we need to process these emotions and move on.
Exactly. And it's really fun, exactly like you said that. And I remember years and years ago when I was with my ex-husband and I was driving home and had this like really like tough mindset. And then my playlist came up and it was just shuffling through whatever songs I had in my library. And it was all these songs were exactly what was going through my head. And I was like, oh my gosh, it knows me. It knows exactly what's happening. Like it was even like more money, more problems because it was you have more money and then more problems are coming up. So it was really fun and just it is like exactly like you said, but like that right song can lift you up, or if you have all the negative words going in, it can pull you down. And, science has shown this does it's real. The Emoto experiment, I think we all know about that with the water, is like what words you listen to and things like that influences how the water freezes. And we're made of 70% water. And someone told me the other day, and your brain's 90% water. So if you're listening to negative things all the time, it's going to have this negative imprint on your mind and your body. Whereas if you're choosing consciously to listen to ballet music or you're the best or whatever it might be, it's going to uplift you and change you on that cellular level on your body and your mind.
Yeah, that's so incredible. I didn't know that stat, but I wholeheartedly believe that. Like, you truly do become what you speak, and you truly do become what you believe. I mean, if you looked at a picture of me 5 years ago, when I was not fully committed to the self love or the healing journey, I look like a completely different person compared to now. It's like I look, I don't know if this is like the right word, but I feel like I look more alive. I just feel
Mm.
like I felt like a walking
Vibrant.
zombie back then.
Yeah. And it is true because when you're in your power and you're, choosing to challenge yourself each day and do better each day, and like you said, plant the good seeds, you light up. And that's how you know you're doing what you want to do. And, even when I work with other people, when you're on the right track because they're like, oh, this is resonating with me. And you can just tell because the light comes on. Whereas if you're just constantly numbing it and you're in that, flight, fright, or freeze state, then you don't look like that at all. You just seem really shut off.
Completely, completely.
Yeah. So I guess from there, you ended up moving away from this toxic relationship, quitting the
Yeah.
pen, realizing that you had to reclaim your life. And what made you feel to venture into different practices, I guess, is it to understand that or just to build it so that you thought, I don't want to see other people going through this?
I was so numb. I was so numb. I was bottling in my emotions for the whole 3 years we were together in the relationship. That I remember when we were together, I would cry and there was no tears. There would literally, my face was dry, but I was trying to cry because inside I was screaming for help and I was so numb that I needed to get away from everything. Uh, I ended up a year after I moved out and moved on and got my own apartment. I remember I started working at my dream salon at the time, and it was great. But, sometimes life reroutes you in ways that you didn't know that you needed. And I ended up getting let go from that job. And I had no idea why, but I was actually really thankful because from there, I ended up booking a one-way ticket to Mexico, and I spent a year there, and it was some of the best times of my life because by the time I got to Mexico, about 6 months into living there, it's been now 2 years since I left my ex. It took me 2 years to finally cry after leaving him because that's how numb I was on my emotions. And I remember I cried for like 4 days because I was just so grateful, but I was also just letting out all the hurt from the past because there's nobody was saying anything to me. Nobody was being mean to me. I was just letting it out. And that's when I knew I really wanted to share my education with others because if I'm bottling up emotions like this from childhood trauma to relationship trauma to job trauma, how many people are doing the same thing and they're just not talking about it? They're taking care of the outside appearances, their hair, their skin, their nails, their eyelashes, etc. But they're not fully feeling their emotions. And that's actually really scary because if us as humans, if we don't do the healing work to heal our childhood trauma and to heal our emotional wound or relational wounds, then we get cold, and that's what creates a cold world. So it's actually a scary place to be if you say, I'm healed, but you're really not. So I really dove deep into that and I started meditations and I started to be honest with myself. Like, yeah, this is what happened. I accept it, but it's part of my past, but I'm not going to let it define me to who I'm going to be in the future. So, really, just being honest, raw, and vulnerable with yourself to accept that, yeah, you faced some shit times before, but that doesn't define where you're going.
100%. And I guess, there's so many things in our culture that tries to make us believe we are who we are in the past. Like a cheetah never changes its spots or a zebra never changes its stripes. But I've been through personally that many identity shifts over the last 6 months because as you grow as a human, as like you said, you heal the different layers, you get new values, you get new standards for your life because you want to keep elevating where you are. And I always say to people, you're not even who you were 5 minutes ago because you're having a conversation and you know something new, so you can't say, I didn't know that anymore. You've learned something about yourself and it's your choice whether to step out of that or not. And a lot of us fall into the trap, I know personally, where you look back and you're like, why did I do that? But it's also, once the person said to me, it was, you did the best you knew at the time. It was because at the time you didn't know any different and you just did what you did, but you wouldn't go back and be that person ever again because you can never do that now that you know better. But if you know better and you still choose not to do better, well, then that is definitely on you. And that is when I feel that the numbing comes in and, choosing to close yourself off because it's like a deep part of you knows better, but you're choosing not to listen to it.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to what you just said because I really love what you said. It's all you know is all you know. We're not responsible for our childhood trauma, but we are responsible to heal it. It doesn't matter, like, you don't have to have something super traumatic happen to you to have childhood trauma. It could be something as simple as being forced to eat a vegetable as a kid that you just didn't want to eat, and your mom or dad was like, "You're going to eat this vegetable." Well, now you have that trauma around that vegetable, like, "Oh, I was forced to eat this. I didn't like it. I don't want to eat it again." That's a form of trauma as well that most people don't understand. So it doesn't have to be something traumatic or a big experience. It can be as little as that. And you have to learn to let go of that and learn to release it, but first and foremost, to recognize it. Because if you don't recognize it, like if you grow up hating mushrooms and you have no idea why, it's probably because somewhere down the line in the childhood that something happened, like you were forced to eat them or you ate so many of them and you got sick and threw up. That can be a traumatic experience as well, and
Yeah.
it's our responsibility to heal it. But once you know and you're choosing not to, then that's on you.
Exactly, exactly. And it's just such a powerful reminder too, like where we're circling the whole way back of where we started, of asking questions like, why do I believe this? Or why do I act this way? Or, and being curious about your own actions. And being curious is probably, I think, the best gift we can have as humans because the more curious you are, the less judgmental you are too.
Absolutely. And I always recommend people ask more questions. I encourage it. I'm somebody who I was deathly afraid of asking a question as a kid. And I mean, deathly afraid. I don't think I've ever said this out loud, but I'm going to. When I was in first grade, I was deathly afraid of asking my teacher if I can go to the restroom. Not once, not twice, maybe three times. I literally peed my pants in the seat and they had to call my mom and tell her to bring me new pants because I was so afraid. And when I would ask my parents questions about why this or how come that, they wouldn't really explain it, and they would say like, "Oh, don't ask questions on that," or "We're not going to talk about it." So that created a trauma of me asking questions. I
Mm.
go to the dance studio, my teachers would say, "Aneta, you talk too much. If you have a question, raise your hands." And then I had a question, I raised my hands, and then they made me feel dumb about it. So I didn't want to. And that's also a trap of learning to just numb and to store that trauma in your body. And
Mm.
it's not until you learn to release it.
Yeah, exactly. And then just when you think you get to the root cause of something, then there's another layer. And you have to keep
Yeah.
peeling and peeling. And I love that you said, if you say you're healed, there's something going on because you're never fully healed. And I know I'm not saying this to be negative if anyone's listening. It's that it's just there's another layer and another layer. And, you know, as you step into the next level of your life as well, things will come up that you never addressed before because there's new challenges, you know, like I was saying, like that song before, like more money, more problems. Because if you have more money in your life, it's like, oh, hang on, what am I going to do with all this money? Can I keep this money? Can I, you know, and then that might challenge your worth story. Or, you know, you might have better health. So then you want to go pursue, you know, more sport. And it's like, oh, hang on, how can I fit this in? And, you know, so there's always things you've got to heal depending on what level of life you're on. But it doesn't mean you're any less whole. It just means you're genuinely curious about improving yourself on the next level.
Yeah, never stop asking questions. That's the beautiful thing is you get to be a student of life. And when you choose to be a student of life, that you're constantly learning. It loops back into what you were just saying of you're not even the same person you were 5 minutes ago because you learned something new. And that's so true. Like I do something that pushes you outside of your comfort zone every day. If you're not ready to dive into childhood trauma, well, try something new. Try something that's going to push you outside of your comfort zone so you can start to learn more about yourself. And if you a new hobby or you make new friends and you start hanging out with them and you realize there's things that you don't like or things that you would prefer not to do, then you can question why. I wonder why. And then you can dive in deeper.
Yeah, definitely. And so I guess as we start to finish up our time together, Aneta, I feel like we could go on so many tangents, but we have to finish. So
Yeah.
if you could if you could heal or change something in the world, what would it be?
I guess healing is a lifelong learning process, so we're never going to be fully healed. We can be healed as much as we can to our best possible ability, but we'll never be fully healed. So I encourage continue falling in love with yourself and continue dating yourself, whether you're married, you're single, you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or you just got out of a relationship. The best relationship that is worth investing is the one with yourself. What are you saying to yourself? What are you feeding yourself? What kind of music are you listening to? It all starts with those little things and start to love yourself to the point where you're committed to create the best version of yourself 1% more every single day. It doesn't matter what the person to your right or the person to your left is doing. What matters is what the person that you look at in the mirror is doing and if they're improving. But continue to date yourself and try to improve 1% more every day.
Yeah. And such fantastic advice because I tell my clients and myself the same thing. So I'm like, exactly.
Yes,
And
you get
where
it.
can, yeah, and where can people find you, Aneta, if they want to work with you or they're curious about your journey?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram at aneta.wallclub. I offer one-on-one 12-week coaching programs, so you can get in touch with me via Instagram, or I have a link in bio that has all of the information on there. I have a book that I wrote as well. It's called Blooming with Self-Love. And then my podcast and where I write my blogs, it's Nourished Inside Out. So you can stay in touch with me with any of those.
Beautiful. And I'll make sure to include all those details in the show notes and connect with you on Instagram if we haven't already as well. But I think we have.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Aneta. Thank you for sharing your journey and your wisdom and just what's come out of, you know, being human, really, and living this life and being curious about it.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, Karen.
Thank you for listening to Willow Healing Matters, the podcast. We have so much love and gratitude that you have taken the time out of your day to empower you on your healing journey. The views shared by the person being interviewed might not necessarily reflect that of the host and should be used at your own discernment. Trust what resonates for you and follow your heart and soul guidance. If you have any underlying medical conditions or mental health issues, please consult with your healthcare provider before pursuing any of the recommendations. Likewise, you can always contact the person being interviewed to find out more information. This can be found in the show notes. Remember to activate, align, heal, empower, and find love in everything that you do.